Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cognitive Neuroscience. I'm very glad to have the opportunity to TA this course, and in this video, I want to give a short rundown of what you'll be doing for your first lab. Now, Lab 1 is really meant as a chance to introduce you guys to some of the software we'll be using throughout the semester, and this includes ZAPS, Norton Psychology Labs, as well as RStudio and MATLAB. Now, the goal of this lab is relatively simple. All we want to do is just make sure you're able to complete one of the ZAPS activities so that you can learn a little bit about the Stroop effect, as well as want to make sure that you can run code effectively in RStudio and MATLAB. So for the first part of the lab, we're going to have you guys do an activity on ZAPS. You're going to take a version of the Stroop test. The way you can find that is if we go here on Canvas and we go to the Assignments tab, you should see something that says ZAPS Stroop Effect like this. You click on it, you'll open up this page in a new window, and you should see a screen that looks like this. Now, some of you may know a thing or two about the Stroop effect from, say, an introductory psychology course, but if you don't, totally fine. I will not spoil the fun. Regardless of where you're at in terms of knowledge for this phenomenon, we're going to ask you to read through the introduction as well as just sort of click through the rest of the aspects of this activity. So once you've read this, you'll click on experience, you'll actually get to do the task yourself, you'll have some data, you get to discuss what that data may mean, and so on and so forth. Just make sure you complete this whole activity and your answers should be recorded in Canvas. Okay, let's go back to the instructions and see what the rest of this lab entails. So for the RStudio portion, in order to make sure that you're able to run code in RStudio, we're going to ask you to run some code that you'll see in a script in this folder you can find on Canvas here. So if we go back to the, or rather if we go to the Lab 1 instructions page here where you're able to see the instructions, you guys will also see these two zip files. This race_r.zip file is going to be what we use to test out RStudio, and then the fMRI lab file is what we're going to be using for MATLAB, which we'll get to in a moment. But what you'll want to do is just make sure that you have this downloaded to your computer. Then you'll go ahead and actually open up RStudio, and we'll have you open up an R project file, which you'll be able to find in this race_r folder. So let me just go to RStudio here. I already have it open, but I'll just reopen it for you guys. So I'm going to click on File, click on Open Project. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I am going to search for the folder. So here's the folder. I'm going to click on this R project file. The nice thing about R project files is it's a way of just organizing all your information for a project in one space. So that way you have all of your scripts as well as your data, packages, so on and so forth, in one nice little place here. So once you open up the file, you should see something that looks like this. And all we want you to do is really two major steps. We're going to have you highlight all of this code and just make sure you're able to run it. I'm on Mac, so if I click Command Return, if you're on PC, it should be Control Enter. As a way of running code, you can also just highlight it and click this Run button. What we're looking for is just making sure that you're actually able to do all these ANOVA tests and these t-tests and so on and so forth. Once you have effectively ran the code, the next step is we actually want to be able to save what you've done here. Meaning we want to be able to save both the functions that you've been running here at the top in the script window, as well as the output that you've received in the console. So to do that, we're basically going to do something similar to sort of how you would create like a markdown file in R Markdown. So you click on File, we're going to click Compile Report, and we're going to have that be outputted as a Word document. We click Compile. Things are running, hopefully. And then you'll actually be able to see a document that contains both the code that is up in the script as well as what the output is when that code is ran. And this is the document that we want you to upload to Canvas. One thing I will point out, this is like a maybe troubleshooting before the problem arises, if the problem arises, is I want to point out that some of the functions we're running here rely on specific packages that you will need to have access to in order to actually run the code. And so, if you're in a situation where it says it can't find a particular function, it could be because you don't have the package installed. And so, if that ends up being packages like these two, all you'd have to do is just uncomment this line of code and run it. And that way, you would have those packages to be able to actually access through library and then run the code that uses the functions that are in those packages. Okay, that's the R stuff. What about the MATLAB stuff? So let's go back to our instructions here. And there's a little bit of text here that's actually explaining sort of what the fMRI data is. We don't need to know too much about that at this juncture. We just want to make sure that you're actually able to do a couple things in MATLAB, such that you're able to run code and sort of load in files into a viewer and look at things. So what you're going to want to do is, just like you did with the RStudio stuff where you downloaded the zip file that had that R project file, you're going to want to download a zip file and open it up. Once you have done that, one thing I do want to point out is that when you open up this file here, you're going to see these two subfolders. You're going to want to make sure that you grab these two and actually move them over to your desktop. Once that's done, you'll go ahead and start up MATLAB. Once MATLAB is open, we're going to ask you to type a couple lines of code here. This is really just specifying the path. And so let's go to MATLAB. So once I've added the path and I've sort of changed directory such that I'm in this data folder here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this line of code here, so that way we'll be able to see this viewing window that looks like this. So I'm going to put this into the command window as well. Just gonna hit return, and here we go. Now the next thing we're gonna do, which should be a lot more interesting, is we're actually gonna load an image into here. So if we click load image, grab this file here and we open it up. Look at that. We've got an MRI, structural image of the brain. And so one thing I want to point out is that if you select crosshairs on, and I want you to pay attention to sort of the text that you see here below this button. If I move this crosshair around, you can actually see some labels for different regions of the brain. And so what we want you to do is locate the right thalamus. Now, if you are unfamiliar with neuroanatomy and you're not really sure where you would start and sort of poking around that way, one thing I may recommend that you do is you just go to Google Images and you search thalamus location. And this should give you a good idea of where you may want to put your cursor when you're looking for this area of the brain. Once you have located the right thalamus, we're going to ask you to just go ahead and take a screenshot of this, and then you're going to upload that image to Canvas as well. So yeah, going back to the instructions here, what we want to make sure you do is you complete that ZAPS exercise as you saw sort of in this page here. Then we want to make sure that you're able to run the code in RStudio, make sure you actually compile that into a report and upload that Word document file. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that you're able to run those couple of lines of code in MATLAB, be able to get this viewer working and locate the right thalamus, take an image once you find that, and upload that image to Canvas as well. So you've got two things you're going to be uploading to Canvas. And that's about it. That's all I have for you for Lab 1. If you have any questions or any issues with using, say, RStudio or MATLAB, or even getting something to work in ZAPS, please let me know, send me an email, and we can talk about it. Other than that, thank you so much, and good luck. Have fun.